Hi, I'm Kai Cheng Thom, and you're watching Ask Kai Quickies, a series of short videos in which I teach you everything you need to know about sex, love, and relationships. So today's amazing question is, I'm a high femme trans lesbian, and I really want to play with other high femme trans lesbians. How? So I think this is a really good question, and I just want to say that I'm going to assume that the word play here means maybe sex, intimacy, some kind of erotic exchange. Like if you want to play softball with high femme trans lesbians, then I assume there's like a Reddit meetup for that. So I'm just going to let you figure that out on your own. But when it comes to sexuality, intimacy, kink, dating, social dynamics in the queer community tend to pigeonhole high femme trans women and femmes. We tend to assume that high femme trans feminine folks are, first of all, heterosexual, meaning into men. We sort of dismiss the idea that there are trans feminine lesbians at all. And where there are trans feminine lesbians, then there are social dynamics in lesbian and bisexual women communities that sort of try and force femme folks to date butch folks or non-femme folks. There's some leftover ideas about mimicking heterosexuality or there being a compulsory butch-femme dynamic that then prevents people from expressing the fullness of the range of their sexual interests. So I want to say that's a real thing. And when you're a trans feminine person out there in the world looking for sexuality in the first place, I mean, first of all, everyone is sexually obsessed with us, but then second, people feel like they have to keep it a secret because there's still a social stigma that surrounds trans feminine bodies, which is horrible and unfair and unjust. Side note, for the non-trans feminine viewer watching this who's like, cis heterosexual men on Grindr, what do you mean? I thought that was for gay people. Well, like, yes. So generally Grindr is like full of hot, sexy gay men meeting other hot, sexy gay men and like, good for them. But what people don't know about Grindr pretty often is that there's this whole like semi-secret, not really secret side of it that's like for trans feminine people and cis hetero-identified or like semi-straight identified, hetero-flexible identified, I don't really know, men who want to have sex with us. And so if you are a trans feminine person floating around on Grindr, what one is usually confronted with is hundreds upon hundreds of men who tend to identify as straight or hetero-flexible, like straight-ish, often who are semi-closeted or discreet, maybe who are married or have cisgender girlfriends. There's usually no photo in the profile, and they're looking strictly for trans women or trans feminine people to play with, often with such charming monikers in their profile as no femmes, no men, hairless only. If you're a trans femme, you know what I'm talking about. So just a little glimpse into the secret side of Grindr for you non-initiated folks. I am happy to note, however, that it is 2022 at the recording of this video, and that means that there are some options that are available in terms of dating apps. I particularly enjoy Lex, my producer, and I did a little field research right before recording this video. We just went on Lex, and we found that there were ads of high femme trans lesbians looking for other high femme trans lesbians, and there were just generally ads of trans lesbians looking for trans lesbians. So that's really exciting to see. I'm also happy to note that within the trans community, as our question asker may or may not already know, there is this growing T4T movement, which is this like reclamation of the glory and joy of trans on trans sex and love. So if you're not already part of the movement, come and get in on this. I think there's more and more folks who are realizing that we just want to love each other up. I've also heard good things about a relatively new dating app called Field. And like I said, like Grindr tends to be oriented around the needs and desires of cisgender men, but there's no reason one can't put up a profile that, loudly declares looking for trans lesbians, looking for other high femmes. And I mean, I think the only thing is one might have to wade through a sea of unwanted attention. But there are gems in that sea, to mix a metaphor. Are there pearls? There are pearls. There are high femme trans pearls in the ocean of undesirable cisgender straight men. I love a good metaphor. There is, of course, always the old-fashioned way of meeting people in person, and I really like to link this to the idea of connecting with and building more trans community. Like, the more trans people know other trans people and hang out with trans people, the more opportunities there are for us to organically meet intimate and sexual partners and invite them into our sexual worlds. And a big part of this, I think, is being bold enough to say to one another, like, I find you really hot. And even if there isn't like a sexual script for us to follow, I would really like us to experiment and see if we can figure things out if you're wanting to do that with me. And what I mean by these sexual scripts is, it's sort of automatic for us to think of like, oh, there's a butch and a femme in a lesbian dynamic, and the butch does this and the femme does this, or there's a man and a woman and the man does this and the woman does this, there's a top and a bottom, the top does this and the bottom does this. And when you bring two bottoms together or two femmes together, then it's like, oh my God, it's impossible. And there's this horrible joke that I heard a little while ago about like, what do two femmes do in a bed with one another, each other's hair, and then it's sort of like, ha ha, femmes could never be sexy with one another. But of course we could. And also it's hot to do one another's hair. Like, that's like the prelude to some interesting foreplay, I just want to say. We can invite each other into a sexual realm without knowing explicitly or exactly what's going to happen. What's important is that we are expressing interest, inviting consent, not just consent in the sense of like, oh, I guess I'll do that, but like, ooh, that's exciting, that's interesting, that's hot. And then we become erotic explorers, erotic adventurers. I'm thinking about like us being like, metaphorical, sexy scuba divers, jumping and diving deep into the ocean of unknown sexual waters. Like, I don't think that any particular genital has to go into any other particular genitals. I don't think that we need to particularly have top-bottom dynamics that are really strict. Like, if we are high femme trans people wanting to play with other high femme trans people, it begins with hello. It begins with invitation. It begins with touching, and then we just follow the pleasure. Pleasure itself is a compass, and pleasure itself will make the map. And if we release the idea that sex has to look in any particular way, then I think that makes us a lot more confident, more bold to invite other people to experiment with us. All right, kids, that's my rant for today. You've been watching Ask Kai Quickies. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on the socials at Xtra Magazine. Be weird, be queer, get messy, have fun.